Right now, millions of Americans are earning more money than their parents ever did, and somehow, they're still broke. Not because they're bad with money, not because they're lazy, but because of 10 silent mistakes almost nobody talks about. Some of them you've probably made this week without even realizing it. And by the end of this video, you're going to look at your own bank account completely differently. Subscribe request, best placed right after the hook, before the intro, or right after mistake 3 or 4 where curiosity is peaking. Before we go further, if you want more videos like this, ones that actually explain why people stay stuck financially and how to break free, hit subscribe right now. Because what I'm about to show you next might be the most important mistake on this entire list. Alternative shorter version, if you want something punchier mid-script. If this is opening your eyes even a little, do me a favor and subscribe. Because the next mistake on this list is the one almost nobody sees coming. Want me to insert both of these directly into the full script at the right spots and give you the updated complete version? Something strange is happening in millions of American households right now, and almost nobody's talking about it. People are working harder than ever. Longer hours. Second jobs. Side hustles at midnight. And yet, somehow, their bank accounts look the same as they did 5 years ago. Sometimes worse. Point 1. Here's the part that should really bother you. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they're unlucky. And it's not because the economy is impossible to survive in, even though it sure feels that way some days. It's because of a handful of quiet, invisible habits. Small decisions made over and over again, so normal, so socially accepted, that most people never even question them. Let that sink in for a second. The scary truth is, you could be doing one or two of these right now without even realizing it. And by the end of this video, you're going to see your own financial life a little differently. Maybe uncomfortably differently. So let's get into it. Because mistake number 1 is probably the most common one of all, and it's hiding in plain sight. Mistake number 1. Confusing a high income with being wealthy. Here's something that surprises a lot of people. Some of the highest earners in the country are also some of the most financially fragile. Think about that for a moment. A doctor making $300,000 a year. A lawyer pulling in a huge salary. A tech worker with stock options and a 6-figure paycheck. On paper, these people look like they've made it. But peel back the curtain, and many of them are one bad month away from serious trouble. Why? Because income and wealth are not the same thing. Income is what comes in. Wealth is what stays. And in America, there's an entire culture built around spending exactly what you earn, and often a little more. The moment someone gets a raise, the car gets nicer. The house gets bigger. The vacations get fancier. It's called lifestyle inflation, and it is silent, and it is brutal. Because the income goes up, but the gap between income and expenses never actually grows. Sometimes it shrinks. And here's the surprising part. A teacher making $50,000 a year who saves consistently can end up with more actual wealth than a 6-figure earner living paycheck to paycheck. It sounds almost unfair. But it's true, and it's happening in millions of households across the country right now. Mistake number 2. Believing debt is just a normal part of life. Now wait a second, before you roll your eyes and think, everyone has debt, that's just how the world works. Let's actually look at what that belief has done to an entire generation of people. Credit card debt in the United States has crossed over $1 trillion. Let that number sit with you. $1 trillion just sitting there, quietly collecting interest month after month, year after year. Here's where things get interesting. Most people don't actually understand how interest compounds against them. If someone carries a $5,000 balance at a high interest rate and only makes minimum payments, they could end up paying back double, sometimes triple, that original amount over time. Not because they bought anything new, just because they let time do its damage. And the truly painful part is, this debt often isn't even for anything meaningful. It's small purchases. Coffee, clothes, things that felt harmless in the moment. One swipe here, one swipe there. It never feels dangerous until suddenly it is. But then something changed in how people think about this. Somewhere along the way, debt became normalized. Almost expected. Car payments forever. Credit card balances forever. Student loans stretching into your 40s. It became just background noise in people's financial lives instead of the emergency it actually is. Believe it or not, some of the wealthiest people in history built their fortune specifically by avoiding this trap, treating debt not as a normal expense, but as a fire that needs to be put out immediately. Mistake number 3. Not understanding where the money actually goes. Honestly, most people don't realize this until they sit down and actually track their spending for the first time. It's almost always shocking. Small daily expenses. Subscriptions nobody remembers signing up for. Delivery fees. Impulse buys. None of them feel like much individually. A few dollars here, $10 there. But add it up over a month, and it becomes hundreds of dollars quietly leaking out of someone's life. Here's a relatable example. Imagine spending just $7 a day on convenience purchases. Coffee, snacks, small extras. That's roughly $200 a month. Over a year, that's more than $2,000. Over a decade, invested instead of spent, that could grow into tens of thousands of dollars. And here's the surprising part. Most people who struggle financially aren't struggling because of one massive mistake. They're struggling because of 100 tiny invisible ones, stacked on top of each other, month after month, year after year. The people who build wealth aren't necessarily the ones who earn the most. They're often the ones who simply pay attention. They know where every dollar goes. Not because they're obsessed with money, but because awareness is the very first step toward control. Mistake number 4. Avoiding investing out of fear. Now here's a mistake that seems responsible on the surface, but is actually quietly devastating. Millions of Americans keep the majority of their savings sitting in a regular bank account, earning almost nothing in interest. It feels safe. It feels smart. But here's the problem nobody talks about enough. Inflation is eating that money alive while it just sits there. Think about that for a moment. If inflation rises by even a few percent each year, and your savings are earning close to nothing, your money is actually losing value over time. Not because it disappeared, but because everything around it became more expensive while it stayed the same. Meanwhile, the stock market, real estate, index funds, these have historically grown wealth over long periods of time, even with all their ups and downs. But fear keeps people on the sidelines. Fear of losing money. Fear of not understanding it. Fear of making the wrong move. And here's where things get interesting. Studies have shown that many Americans who avoid investing aren't avoiding it because they lack the money. They're avoiding it because they were never taught how it works. Nobody explained it in school. Nobody explained it at home. So it feels intimidating, mysterious, almost dangerous. But the real danger isn't investing. The real danger is doing nothing, for decades, while inflation quietly erases the value of every dollar saved. Mistake number 5. No emergency fund. At this point, things become impossible to ignore. Because here's a statistic that should genuinely alarm you. A huge percentage of Americans could not cover an unexpected expense of even a few $100s without going into debt or borrowing from someone. Let that sink in. A single car repair. A single medical bill. A single broken appliance. And suddenly, an entire household is thrown into financial crisis. This is where dreams get derailed. Not because of some massive catastrophe, but because of ordinary, everyday emergencies that life throws at everyone eventually. The only difference between someone who handles it calmly and someone who spirals into debt is often just one thing: whether or not they had a small cushion of savings set aside. And here's the part that most people miss. An emergency fund isn't about being rich. It's about breaking the cycle. Without one, every unexpected expense becomes a new debt. And that debt becomes interest. And that interest becomes another financial setback. Round and round it goes. But then something changed for the people who broke free from this cycle. They didn't need to save a fortune. They just needed a starting cushion, even a small one, to stop the bleeding before it started. Mistake number 6. Buying things to look successful instead of becoming successful. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Social media has quietly reshaped the entire psychology of money in America. People see luxury cars, designer clothes, exotic vacations, all curated and polished for the camera. And subconsciously, a dangerous belief creeps in. If I want to be seen as successful, I need to look successful. But here's the twist nobody expects. Many of the people showing off that lifestyle online are drowning in debt behind the scenes. The car is leased. The clothes are on a credit card. The vacation was financed. It's an illusion, built for likes and comments, not built on actual financial stability. And here's the surprising part. Some of the wealthiest people in the world live modestly. They drive normal cars. They live in reasonable homes. They avoid flashy spending, not because they can't afford it, but because they understand something most people don't. Wealth that's meant to be seen is usually wealth that doesn't actually exist. This mistake is one of the most emotionally powerful ones, because it's not really about money. It's about self-worth. People buy things to feel validated, to feel respected, to feel like they matter. But chasing appearance instead of actual financial security is one of the fastest ways to stay poor while looking rich. Mistake number 7. Ignoring retirement savings until it feels urgent. Now here's a mistake that doesn't feel dangerous at all in the moment. In fact, it feels perfectly reasonable. I'll start saving for retirement later, once I'm making more money, once things settle down, once life feels less chaotic. But here's where the story takes a surprising turn. Time is the single most valuable asset in building wealth, more valuable than income, more valuable than luck. And every year someone delays, they're not just losing a year. They're losing the compounding growth that year could have produced for decades afterward. Imagine two people. One starts saving for retirement at 25. The other starts at 35. Even if the second person eventually saves more money overall, the first person often ends up with significantly more by retirement age, simply because their money had more time to grow. 10 years might not sound like much. But in the world of compound growth, 10 years can be the difference between comfortable retirement and financial stress in your 60s and 70s. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid facing. Waiting doesn't feel like a mistake while you're doing it. It only feels like a mistake decades later, when it's much harder to fix. Mistake number 8. Letting emotions control financial decisions. Most people stop analyzing here, assuming money problems are purely mathematical. But the truth goes much deeper than that. Fear causes people to sell investments at the worst possible moment, during market downturns, locking in losses instead of waiting for recovery. Excitement causes people to make impulsive purchases they can't actually afford. Stress causes people to avoid looking at their bank account altogether, letting problems grow silently in the dark. Here's a relatable scenario. Someone has a stressful day at work. They come home emotionally drained. And almost instinctively, They open a shopping app, order something they don't need, just to feel a small burst of relief. It's not really about the item. It's about needing to feel a moment of control in a life that often feels overwhelming. This happens across every income level, rich or poor, educated or not. Emotions don't check your bank balance before making decisions. And here's the surprising part. Many financial experts agree that emotional discipline is often more important than financial knowledge. You can know exactly what you're supposed to do with money and still fail if your emotions are steering the wheel instead of your logic. Mistake number 9. Never learning basic financial literacy. Honestly, this might be the root cause behind almost every other mistake on this list. Most schools don't teach students how loans work, how interest compounds, how credit scores are built, or how to create a simple budget. Young adults enter the real world knowing algebra and historical dates, but not knowing how to read a pay stub or understand a mortgage. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Financial institutions know this. Some products, some fine print, some interest structures, they aren't designed to be simple. They're designed to be confusing, because confusion benefits the lender, not the borrower. Without financial literacy, people are essentially playing a game without knowing the rules. And when you don't know the rules, you lose more often than you win, not because you're careless, but because you were never taught how to protect yourself in the first place. But then something powerful happens once someone finally learns these basics. Suddenly, decisions that once felt confusing become clear. Suddenly, that mysterious world of interest rates and credit scores and investing becomes something manageable, something controllable. Knowledge doesn't just inform decisions. It removes fear. And removing fear is often the first real step toward financial freedom. Mistake number 10. Believing it's too late to change. And now we arrive at the final mistake. Perhaps the most heartbreaking one of all, because it isn't really about money. It's about hope. Many people believe that because they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, or beyond, and haven't built significant wealth yet, it's simply too late. The window has closed. The opportunity is gone. But here's the truth that so many people never hear. Some of the most remarkable financial turnarounds in history happened well into people's later years. Businesses started in someone's 50s. Investment portfolios built from nothing after 60. Debt completely eliminated after decades of struggle, simply because someone finally decided enough was enough. Let that sink in. It is never too late to build something different. Every single day is a new starting point, if someone chooses to see it that way. The real tragedy isn't being behind financially. The real tragedy is giving up before even trying to catch up, bringing it all together. So here we are. 10 quiet, invisible mistakes, each one small on its own, but devastating when combined. Confusing income with wealth, normalizing debt, losing track of spending, fearing investment, skipping emergency savings, chasing appearances, delaying retirement, letting emotions drive decisions, never learning the basics, and believing it's too late. None of these mistakes make someone a bad person. They make someone human, because these patterns are everywhere. They're modeled by family, reinforced by culture, and rarely questioned until something forces a wake-up moment. But here's the hopeful part, the part that really matters. Every single one of these mistakes can be reversed. Not overnight. Not with some magical trick. But through small, consistent, deliberate choices repeated over time. Wealth isn't usually built through luck or huge windfalls. It's built through awareness, patience, and discipline, applied quietly, day after day, year after year, long after the excitement of the decision has faded. So here's the real question you should be asking yourself right now. Which of these 10 mistakes have quietly been shaping your own financial life? And more importantly, What would happen 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if you decided today to change even just one of them? Because the people who break free from this cycle don't do it by becoming someone completely different. They do it by becoming a little more aware, a little more intentional, one decision at a time. The mistakes are common, but so is the opportunity to change them. And that choice, right now, in this very moment, is entirely yours.